Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. So yeah, I'm Ralf. So I'm from zanox, and zanox is a marketing company. But today I want to talk about all the wearables, all the sensors, because I'm doing that stuff for roughly about 8-9 years now, because the topic is still old in the business. In the audience, who is wearing a wearable like a Fitbit or a Jawbone or a watch, Apple Watch? Couple of people. So it's a bit more growing. So 5 years ago, nobody has this stuff, even if it was still on the market. But I will show you something. This, for example, is a classical Jawbone. You know that perhaps also the Fitbit and all the different companies who are producing that kind of products. And with this product, you can measure your sleep. So we can detect a lot of sleep data. And the question always is what we can do with all the data. And normally, I'm also a medical doctor, and so sometimes we have a look at the deep sleep, so how deep you sleep and how restful you sleep and the quality of your sleep. But you can do a lot of more with that data if you look more into the data. So, for example, who of these two types sleep better? Normally, these companies showed us 83% is person A and 78% sleeping goal is person B. The main important data on this slide is the deep sleep. You have to look at the deep sleep. So person A is sleeping a bit more than 2 hours and person B is sleeping 3 hours. So normally you would say, okay, person B has a better sleep and rests much, much better. But also interesting is with this data, and I always do this on some conferences with some executives who are wearing that stuff and show this data to me. I always ask the question, who of this drank beer or wine or drank alcohol? Because you can also see this on the data. So you can see this here on the slide. For example, person A is definitely drinking alcohol before sleeping, because that are the hiccups, the yellow dots in the sleeping pattern. And if you have more detailed a look on this data, you can see much more of this, that this person has drank alcohol before going to sleep. What can we do with all these data? That's for sure. We can do better business, advertising, and do recommendations. So a lot of business models are based on that stuff. There are paid models, there are subscription models. There are so many business models which are built on that kind of data to sell this data, to use that data more and more. Often comes the question about data security and privacy. In that case, for me, I would say, a couple of years ago, data privacy and all the data security stuff, it was always a problem to talk with the lawyers and that stuff. But now, since 1.5 years, data security, data privacy is not a problem anymore, because it's really settled down what we can do with data, what we could not do with data. So it's really written down. And I always see in discussion with people or with the lawyers together, which people mention, oh, I'm unsure, I'm not quite sure what we can do with the data. It's clearly written down what we can do with data. So also my advice to a lot of startups, you can do that stuff, just to clarify that it's not complicated with all data privacy and security. Does anyone knows what this slide shows? This is from 2007. So it's still on the internet since 2007. And it's quite interesting, because that's the patent of the Apple Watch. So since 2007, everybody can read this, what the Apple Watch, what Apple has patented on the Apple Watch. So also the sending of emails and also watching the steps and all that stuff. They have also in the patent stuff written down with the pulse and the blood pressure and that stuff, what's coming up. So it's not about always speculation in the press, what's happening there. You can read it directly online if you are sometimes clever and browse for it. On the next example, I will show you some kinds of that wearable, what's happening currently. So this is a slide what's patented by Apple a couple of days ago. So around about 30 to 50 patents per day I've written down on the internet, and Apple is just producing all that touch sensors and motion sensors and get more and more things into our environment where we can flip, for example, the Apple TV, like moving up the volume is like that one or lowering the volume is like that, or just switching off the channels like that one. So you just move into your room or place your mobile phone there, and the iPhone is recognizing your movements and doing all the commands with these. So here you can see where the future is going on with all the wearable devices. It's not only wearable, it's around us. It's becoming more and more sensors around us, and all the functionalities are growing more in that direction. You know that, for example, here just a Fitbit example for measuring all the blood pressure and the pulse and all that stuff. It doesn't have to look ugly, so it's becoming more and more better and better. Also, more and more devices under our beds, in our environment, in the light bulbs, in the heating, and in our homes. So these devices are coming more and more. I flip through that a bit more. This the past example of the Google glasses. So also a lot of swimming and sport sensors and wearables are in place more and more. Also on skateboards, on the football shoes, on the balls. For example, the football shoes are now, I think, 3 to 4 years on the market to track all the tension, the traction, the steps. So these are quite old devices still in the market. And currently the trend is more and more to gain more from this data, because it's getting more and more spread into the public and used by more and more people. Also on the mountain bikes, snowboards, surfboards. So there are growing more and more devices to capture more and more data, the length of the ride, the maximum speed, the lowest, the wave numbers. So more and more data. And what I always say is, if we talk about that wearables and sensors, in the marketing technologies, we always talk about cross-device. So we want to detect more and more devices, and it started off with our mobile phones or with our desktop computers. But it's more than that. If we talk about cross-device detecting more and more data, as we heard today in the morning, we need to collect more and more data. It's about that one. It's about the television, the refrigerator, the households, the home itself. And as I've written down here, some companies down there are some collaborations, and you can think about what's happening there. We know that stupid story about that my refrigerator knows all that stuff, how many milks are inside there. But there are growing new business models with that. For example, I have the refrigerator on one side, and on the other side, I have a delivery service, Lieferando, Bringmeister, Rewe, and so on, and they get into direct collaboration with that refrigerator company. And so sometimes in the future, it could be possible that you get your refrigerator for free if you have a subscription model for your Lieferando for 12 months or 24 months. So these business models based on data, how many milk are you using recurrently in some subscription models are rising more and more, also with some telecommunication companies, with Netflix. More and more companies are focusing not on digital business models. They are concentrating more and more on Internet of Things, on wearables, on devices, to connect these more and more, because the business models get more interesting. And I will show you something later on. This is just an example we've done, for example, on some airports, that with your wearables, you get instant information, proceed to gate number 5, so it's quite easy to presume or to access to that data and give some recommendations for the flight passengers. Also, what's used currently for some television companies, that these additional use data from these wearables, from that sensors, are more and more placed into the television. So for example, if we have at Red Bull, all the athletes get some wearables for some heart pressure and body temperature and so on. And during the live stream of the athletes, you see directly on your television, on your screen, on the live cast, you see the blood pressure, the jump height, the length of the jump, and all that additional data stuff directly from that athlete. And that gets more and more included also in live streams in television, or also to create new stories about healthy cooking, about living healthy. So more and more of this data is not standalone, so it gets more and more integrated in existing business models. Here, for example, in the healthcare area, we worked a lot for collecting diseases and medical side effects, for example. And here we have more than 130 million side effects of medications, of diseases. And that stuff is also used then for making better prescription, better forecasts in the medical area, also for the pharmacy, which treatments which we need in what area, which medication do we need in what area, in which zip code. So from this data we learn more and more. And the interesting thing I've learned on that project is we collect lots of data. And we have the doctors on one side, and the doctors have the experience on blood pressure and temperature and all that stuff. And we have the data scientists on the other side. And in between, we have millions and billions of data. And the problem is to understand the data, because we are generating more and more data, but we are not generating more insights. So that's a huge problem to understand these data. Why is that medication useful? Why is that medication not useful? What disease has which causes. So this is really, really difficult. And I see this in the future that we have a lot work to do for data analytics and learn from that data because we do not know it currently. So that's why it's really interesting to step more and more into that. The online business enters the first disruption phase for all that wearables and sensors. So normally I don't like the word disruption, but in that case I will show you why I will tell about disruption. This, for example, is a price comparison page where you can do your price comparison for gas, for DSL contracts, for car insurances and all that stuff. And normally you would think the competitor of this company is a better mobile app or a better price comparison page. So, but the competitor is that one. Because the Internet of Things, the wearables, that are the competitors of these previous price comparison page. Why? Because if you log in, the Internet of Things, the sensor has much more data about your behavior, about the data, about your behavior, what you like, what you don't like, the heating in your room, the light, whatever, much more data. And based on that, the contracts, the price comparison could be much more focused in direct comparison, for example, with E.ON or Vattenfall and so on. So that the product gets much more shaped, and if you compare this to the old price comparison mobile app or web page, they have no data. So they are completely overruled by such Internet of Things devices, and they couldn't do anything about against these Internet of Things devices. Here, for example, just a short example about bigger sleep and coffee consumptions. Normally you think this is Starbucks and some big clinics about sleep data, about coffee consumption, but in total it's not all of that companies, it's the jawbone in that kind, because with their app, with their sleeping data, they have the biggest amount of data with sleeping and coffee consumption. So that's really hard to see that data companies are changing from the big. You think that Starbucks has the biggest coffee consumption database, but it isn't. They haven't leveraged their data until now, and also the combination of the data. It's not used by that big companies. Also here, for example, that wearables and sensors in the shoes, that's something a couple of years ago from Nike, with all the jumps and the height and the tension, which you can detect with all that wearables and with all that shoes. Here's some example what we can also do with sensors and devices. For example, that's Planet.com. That's a company who is building satellites with cameras, and it's really interesting because that company is not doing some stupid photos from the orbit. They are doing marketing, because they are scanning the Earth or some fields, how many cars are in front of the traffic light, how many visitors are now watching in real time in that stadium, and that stuff. So they can do advice, real-time advice for marketing companies, where are the most crowded places, where are some, where we can show some advertising. And so the companies are completely changing for marketing. So a marketing company is not still alone the biggest driver of marketing. There are some new companies, for example, this satellite company. And a marketing company could not have this data, so they have to collaborate with these kinds of companies. Here, for example, sensor data is also a decision maker. I don't know if you know that device, that's Skio. That's some kind of this device, and you can put this on the water and scan this water, and you can see if it's alcohol inside, is it sweet, has it sugar, how many calories it has, how many fat, proteins, carbs, and so on. So this gives us, as the consumer, much more information about the product. So if you are in the supermarket and you put that device on an apple, no, that apple is not healthy. I will put that on the competitor, and I will choose that apple. And you can do that for everything. You can put that on your shoes, on your trousers, on your shirt, on the carpet, to analyze more and more with these devices. It costs around about 190 euro. And it will be shipped in December. So it's quite interesting to see what these devices and sensors with this amount of data are doing with our behavior, and also decision makers, because as a company, as an Apple producer or as a producer of some carpets or of the water, I have to see what the consumers will see on my product, what data is generated with my products I produce. So we as clients, as consumers, have much more possibilities to work with that data and to make better decisions. Or on the other side, we have a device which gives us recommendations, which apple we need to buy or which banana we need to eat. So every sensor could be your competitor or where you can make some collaborations with. The Internet of Things is changing the online business, as I told you before. It's disrupting. It's not about the mobile app. It's not about a new web page. It's not about a new service. You have to think about the Internet of Things devices, because they are generating more and more data. And because of the data, they are closer to the clients. And that's the major step. That's called the over-the-top model, the OTT model. You have to be as close as possible to the clients. How many devices? There's a couple in the market. I will just leave that slide. That's enough, and it's growing like hell. Just go one back. No, just one back. Nevertheless, I don't care. What I would like to say is, with all the data we are just focusing and working with, I've done a lot with all that Kafka implementations and all with Hadoop and HDFS file system and that stuff. And my takeaway was always, first we have to focus on which kind of developers we have in the company, because sometimes we have a lot of developers which are focused on Java, for example, and only one or two are focusing on Kafka. And so sometimes it took so long to implement this, to change the company, that you have a group of people that they are working with Kafka, for example. So sometimes I learned it's better to start with a team which has the experience and the knowledge to start fast and get this product done, sometimes with a bit older technology, but it's immediately done, and then jump step by step to the new Spark and so on, to the new technologies, because also the organization has to grow. So that was sometimes a big problem or a big threat. And also on the other side, it's hard to learn from the data. As I mentioned, with all the healthcare data, for example, there is a huge field which we need to know and which we need to analyze that kind of data. And last but not least, I would like to mention what I learned in the past so many times. It's just start that thing, not thinking too long about it. Should I start that, and what are the obstacles? Sometimes you think longer about the obstacles and all that stuff than just to start that project. For example, I've started a project. It's based on some retargeting technology. For example, that's for, you know, that from Zalando shoes. If we see advertising again and again, that damn shoe, and you can use that shoe, you can use that algorithm, that technology, also for cinema and movie actors. It's exactly the same algorithm. On one side, you use that for detecting women or men for buying some shoes and building some profiles, client profiles of that shoe, of that client who wants to buy that shoe. But you can use the same algorithm also on cinema actors. It's the same algorithm, and you just use the same technology and step that to the other side and use that on the film industry. And that helped me so much to understand business, to learn from that, to change the business from one side to the other side. And also, I started early this year some space company for doing some space telescopes, which you can remote control. And that's quite easy. Just start it, think about it, and just implement this, and then it progress further and further on, and then more and more people come to that point and will help you with the data analytics and with the new technologies to build that together. So that's my takeaway for today. Just start it, do not think too long about it, and focusing on the case to start new businesses. Thank you very much.